So we're going to move along now to our next two keynotes, and they're learnings from the 200 SME project down to the ground level that we were just talking. People, the leaders who are helping to implement this project in their local area, but also helping each other implement it in the different territories where we ran it. So the first person who will be giving us their insight, it's Nicola Doppio. He's from the Hub of Innovation in Trentino. He's going to be talking 200 challenge, fostering innovation through an innovation context for user experience, giving their original ones where these ideas came from. So, Nicola, are you there, sir?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Sounds good.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I think that by now you should also see my slides on the screen. Can you confirm that?
Yes, we do.
Very good. So again, I'm Nicola Doppio from Hub Innovazione Trentino. Thank you all so much for joining us in this final event. And thank especially to Miriam Moore and all the colleagues from Steinbeiß Europa Centrum for having organized this big event. Thank you also to Mr. Daniel Gassman and all the project officers from ESMEA, European Commission, for joining us today. I'm the coordinator of Project 200 Challenge, and I'm responsible for open innovation initiatives at HIT. And in my 15 minutes presentation, I will tell you about the reasons behind this project and its results, and why we believe it's a story worth sharing. So first of all, I will tell you a couple of things about Hub Innovazione Trentino. HIT is a technology transfer foundation launched in 2016. We support the University of Trento as well as research centers in Trentino to reach out to companies to launch R&D and innovation projects. And we also support licensing out of patents and IP and the creation of research spin-offs. And we are very active.
Nicola, just to tell you that we can see your PowerPoint notes as well. You might move that to a different screen.
So let me just give me 1 second, because maybe I was sharing something else that the extra slides that I should share. So I beg your pardon.
Good work on picking that up, Miriam. Nice.
Yeah. Now you should see the slide, right?
Perfect.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, we are very active at the European level at HIT. Especially, we're part of 5 EIT kicks, as you can see from this slide, and yes, as a technology transfer foundation, at a certain point in 2016, when we were launched, we wanted to start adopting new. Sorry, I was searching for the buttons to operate my slides here. Yeah, of course we do a lot of technology push, supporting researchers in exploiting their IP and their technologies. But when we were launched in 2016, we also wanted to have some different tools and approaches to have researchers aligning their research and innovation activities to the needs from the market, in a way to have kind of a pull driver in our work. And so we started searching for examples and methods of practices and schemes to support open innovation. And we soon ended up looking into the functioning of innovation prizes and innovation contests. So as you may know, innovation prizes and contests are initiatives that allow to find solutions to big technological challenges, also impacting on society as a whole, like putting a man on the moon, that you can see from this slide. And they made it possible thanks to the participation of a very large amount of solvers, like startups, researchers, students, freelancers, or even retired professionals that on a global scale compete to provide potential solutions to those challenges. And they also can receive rewards, of course, in the form of prizes. And similarly, large companies in the last decade launched their own open innovation prizes and open innovation programs to crowdsource ideas to support internal R&D of technologies and products and services. And what we did was basically get inspired by these open innovation formats and to scale them down to our regional scale with the purpose of using them to support not the solution of societal challenge, but product innovation issues and challenges in companies from Trentino region, especially small and medium enterprises, by means of connecting them with researchers and young talents from the area that could contribute to solve their innovation problems. And given the fact that in Trentino we had and still have a growing cluster of ICT companies as well as manufacturing companies with a lot of human-computer interfaces, plus we also have top-level university courses in human-computer interaction, as well as, I would say, a long-standing tradition in organizing and in running living labs, we decided to launch a regional innovation contest that could support companies in innovating digital products and services with young user-centered design talents. So after a few months of, I would say, co-design with a number of stakeholders in our territory, in 2017, we ran for the first time the UX Challenge, which is a basically two-day event during which companies can test, innovate, and redesign the user experience of digital products and services, and especially the human-computer interfaces of those products and services. So how does it work? On one side, we basically have a number of companies, normally 5 to 6 or 7 companies that bring in design challenges over both existing products that could be already on the markets, such as mobile apps, software, and everything that can have a digital interface. But they can also be new service or product concepts. And on the other side, we create teams of young design students and talents from a interaction design background, but also an innovation management background that team up and spend 2 days with the company to develop solutions to the presented challenges. And teams are mentored by senior UX design professionals and also interaction design researchers from the University of Trento and from the research foundations that we have in Trentino. And the setting is actually very much similar to a hackathon, but nobody writes a line of code and everything is carried out at a user interaction and human-computer interaction level. But how can teams achieve these results in only 2 days? So that is possible because at the core of the UX Challenge, there is a validated methodology that was developed not by HIT, but by Google Ventures a few years ago. And the methodology is called the design sprint, which is a 5-phase process that allows product development teams to put in practice design thinking and user-centered design techniques, but in a feasible way to solve product development problems. And the key part of the design sprint is probably the test part. So as you can see from this slide, the 5th phase of the design sprint, because there is where you have real users and real customers joining the process and testing the prototype solutions that the product development teams, in this case of the UX Challenge, the UX Challenge team, are prototyping for the company. So the results that are developed by the UX Challenge are also validated with users. And this means that if you organize a UX challenge on day 2 morning, you have a sort of 50 people, users joining in the process to be managed, which is quite demanding actually. So as a result, the team do not only deliver ideas, like you can have in many idea challenges and ideation contests, but they can deliver tangible and validated interface design mockups or wireframes, and also testable prototypes by means of using prototyping software, such as those that you can see on the right slide, on the right side of this slide, in a way that companies can really bring home these solutions and industrializing them in a way that they can bring to the market a improved version of the product, as these, for instance, mobile application that you can see in this slide. And notice that the IPR of the outputs of the UX challenge are regulated in a way that they are honored by the company, because we do want companies to fully exploit these results. Although on the other side, we are completely aware that you cannot really do design in only 2 days. So we expect that the outputs of the UX challenge are just sort of the starting point for the companies to embark in a longer journey, and probably in a change process in companies that entails also becoming aware of the benefits of user-centered design methodologies, but also they become aware about the skills that are needed to be incorporated in the company in order to operate these methodologies. And they also get in touch with the people that they could really hire at the end of the UX challenge, such as the solvers of the challenge, as well as stay in touch with the mentors that can become their innovation partners after the end of the challenge for fully developing the results of the UX challenge. Now, talking about impact, starting 2017, we have run 4 editions of the UX challenge, and we have collected some qualitative evidence of the impacts of the UX challenge. For instance, we know that companies are very satisfied about the outputs of the UX challenge. We know that companies hire some students after the end of the challenge. I mean, we know this because we interview the companies after the completion of the challenge. We know that there are some collaborations going on between SMEs and the mentors after the completion of the challenge. And we know that there is an improved awareness of the benefits of the user-centered design techniques. And also, we know that there has been an increased trust between companies and the academia, which is what really is most important for us at HIT. But we wanted to have more quantitative and more sound evidence of the impact of the UX challenge, and that is why in 2018 we decided to submit a proposal to the Horizons 2020 InnoSup 6 call for project entitled Supporting Experimentation and Innovation Agencies, as you can see from this slide, with the aim of performing a large-scale pilot of the UX challenge across Europe and evaluate more thoroughly its impacts on especially SMEs. And that is basically the story behind Project 200SMEchallenge, which funded the launch of the UX challenge in other 6 countries beyond Italy, with the purpose of collecting more accurate evidence about the outcomes and the impacts of the UX challenge in a way to validate the scheme and also possibly scale it up to other domains well beyond user experience design. Why not? And with that regard, I have to thank very much the 7 partners of the project that made this possible. So Business Oulu from Finland, Taltech Science Park from Estonia, the Lithuanian Innovation Center from Lithuania, the Danish Design Center from Denmark, Steinbeis Europa Centrum from Germany, and Spitec Science Park from Spain, and Fondazione Bruno Kessler from Trento, Italy. And especially I have to thank very much the I would say, amazing team of colleagues that engaged in a very demanding learning and capacity building process that let them set up and replicate the UX challenge in basically no time, and with the KPI targets that like number of involved companies altogether that were never experimented in Trento before, but allowed us to get in touch with almost 200 SMEs. And that is why the project is called 200SMEchallenge, of course. And this effort made it possible to find the answers to the questions that we had. So does the UX challenge really impact on SMEs? Is the challenge feasible and scalable in other regional ecosystems beyond the one that we have here in Trentino? And can we build other opportunities for SMEs well beyond the UX design and ICT industry? And as a result, and this is my last slide, we managed to run the UX challenge in 5 different countries between February and April 2021. We have involved 190 SMEs in the process. 60 companies could benefit, could participate as beneficiaries to the 7 UX challenges. 281 solvers formed teams and developed solutions to the challenges that were provided by these 60 companies. We had some 62 mentors involved in the process, and almost 200 citizens that would come from the territories and joining the UX challenge to take part to those tests and validation actions that are meant to be part of the design sprint. And all this was achieved in a fully remote setting due, of course, to the surge of COVID-19. But what's most is that we allowed to collect evidence of the fact that the UX challenge does impact on the innovation capacity of small and medium enterprises. And with that regard, I'm now giving the floor to Davide Azzolini from FBK IRVAPP, who will tell us more about this evidence and especially about the methodology that was utilized, the randomized control trial methodology that was utilized to collect this evidence. And I have to thank very much Davide for not only making the RCT study happen within the project, but also for educating all us project partners on what it means to encapsulate and embed our actions into a more wider and thorough approach that can allow us to validate the actions that we do. But before giving the floor to Davide, let me thank again very much the European Commission, especially ASMEA, Mr. Daniel Gassman and the project officers who were so kind to be here today with us, for trusting us, for supporting us throughout the implementation of the project, and basically to allow us to strengthen and really advance our capacity as innovation agencies to experiment new innovation and support schemes. Thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nicola. Just quickly, I'm going to jump in just real fast. We're going to have some questions, but maybe if you want to take David first, and then I'll join both of you for some questions afterwards. So let's go straight to David as you introduce. So David, Absolutely. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I am. I'm sharing my screen.
Great.
All right. Can you see the screen?
Yep, we see the full screen. You've got, there we go. Now we're in full screen. Delightful.
All right. So thank you everyone for being here. It's a great pleasure to present to you the main results of the randomized control trial evaluation that was carried out within the 200SME challenge project. And I'm also thankful, especially to Nicola, for bringing me in, and I can assure you that it was a bi-directional learning process. So I learned a lot from working with you all and all the partners in this experiment. So what I'm trying to do in this presentation is illustrating to you the main results, the main learnings that we can take home from this evaluation. But before that, let me just spend a few words about our institution, so the research center where I work, which is called FBK IRVAPP. It is a program and public policy evaluation research center based at the Bruno Kessler Foundation. And we mostly are expert in designing and carrying out experimental or quasi-experimental evaluation studies across many fields of policy, from education, social policy, as well as innovation policy and labor market policy. And right, so within the 200SMEchallenge within this evaluation, we started, as in all evaluation, from stating an evaluation question. And our evaluation question reads as follows. So for digital industry SMEs, which is our target population, does participating in the UX challenge, the treatment, improve digital design readiness and awareness in the companies? This is the outcome on which we expect to see an effect of UX challenge participation in the companies. And based on this evaluation question, what we did was try and describe what we call the theory of change of the UX challenge. The theory of change is basically a description, an analytic description of the causal chains that link our treatment to our outcome. So it is basically a description and identification of the sensible outcomes that can be actually measured and on which we can observe an impact of the UX challenge. As you can imagine, digital design readiness and awareness is a quite broad concept. So what we had to do was to define and measure specific indicators that relate to this broad concept. And the first of these indicators has to do with knowledge about digital design. So our first hypothesis was that participating in the UX challenge would increase companies' knowledge about digital design. Second, we expected that through this participation in this treatment, participants could develop more positive attitudes about digital design. And what I mean by attitudes, I mean, we expected companies could recognize the value and the potential benefits coming from digital design approaches for the companies. And third, we also wanted to see whether through participation in this challenge, participants would increase their intention to adopt digital design techniques in their daily practice. And in the long run, our theory tells us that all this should bring to increased innovation capacity in the SMEs. But of course, as in all evaluation, we cannot measure everything. Plus, there are strong time constraints. So we focus on these specific indicators, and we could investigate longer-term impacts in the future. So, but in order to answer to our evaluation question in a strict and convincing way, two necessary conditions have to be met. There are many more than two actually, and for those of you who will participate in the workshop number 5 later, we will have time to go through them together. But here I wanted to stick and to draw your attention on two key conditions. Namely, the first one is we need statistical power. So in order to have a convincing and solid evaluation of the impacts of any intervention, you need numbers. So you need a sufficiently large number, in our case, of eligible companies in order to produce statistically reliable and precise estimates. The second condition that needs to be met is building two groups that are comparable. We call them treatment group, so the companies that take part in the UX challenge, and the control group, and which doesn't take part in the challenge. So, and the key assumption, the key point here is that the two groups have to be comparable, with the only exception that only the treatment group takes part in the UX challenge. So what did we do to make these two conditions true? So in the first case, to recruit a sufficiently large sample, we ran together with all the partners involved across the 7 countries. We collected applications from companies. And we collected 208 applications, but only 190 of them were eligible and suitable to participate. So this was a success, I think, I'm pretty sure, because everything was done through pandemic times. So it was not easy to get people aboard. And we reached, let's say, 95% of our initial target, which was 200 SME participating. So this was a success. As you can see from these graphs, companies were coming from all participating countries, and they represent different industry sectors. So not only the ICT sector, but all other sectors that are represented here. And the condition was that the companies had a specific product or a service or a prototype with a digital interface in order to be, of course, eligible to participate. The second condition, so making these two comparable groups, the treatment and the control group, was made through randomization, which is basically a lottery design, which allows us to allocate eligible companies in a random way to either the treatment or the control group. So this design allows us to have two groups that are internally heterogeneous, but they are on average equal one to the other. And this is the key condition that allows us to attribute any difference that we can observe in the outcomes after the treatment to the UX challenge. So to derive strong causal inference about the true effects of the treatment. So before showing you the results of the experiment, let me just spend a few words about how participant companies saw the whole experience of the UX challenge. And they were indeed quite satisfied. They were highly satisfied with the solutions that were developed in the UX challenges. They give a score of 7.5 out of on a scale from 0 to 10. And they were very highly satisfied with the UX challenge experience overall. They give a score of 9 out of 10. Companies, so participating companies, were also showing clear intention to take follow-up actions. So 9 out of 10 would apply, say they would apply to the next edition of the UX challenge. Many of them would say that they will stay in touch with the solvers and they will utilize design sprint in the future. So this was quite interesting to observe, and it was a signal of the success of this project. But these are the most important findings from the randomized control trial, the ones that I'm about to show you now. So these are experimental estimates of the treatment, so the UX challenge effects on different outcomes. And here I show you the result regarding 3 different indicators of knowledge about digital design. And on the 3 of them, you see that the average of the treatment group is always higher than the average value observed in the control group. So we conclude there was positive impacts on the three indicators of knowledge. If you look closer, then this impact is statistically significant only on two of these indicators, namely design sprint knowledge that was tested through a quiz. There we find substantial effect of the treatment. We find an increase of 19%. And we see a statistically significant impact also on practical knowledge to implement digital design, 12% effect. So companies were, so participants gained both in terms of specific knowledge about design sprint, as well as in perceived practical knowledge on how to implement digital sprint in their activity. We don't find statistically significant effects on beliefs about the evidence, the benefits of design sprint, but we see positive effects of 9%, which lead us to believe that if the sample was bigger, maybe this difference would have been statistically significant, but we don't know. We don't find any effect at all on wished or expected design sprint adoption by the company. So we ask participants if they wished that the company adopted design sprint, the first question, and then we ask if they thought, if they expected the company to do that. So it was a way to try and disentangle aspirations from expectations. But on the two indicators, we find zero effects. To try and understand this result a bit more in depth, we ask both treatment control participants what they think are the main obstacles they would face in order to bring digital design as a practice in their companies. And what is interesting is that most of the companies identify factual constraints for companies in order to invest in digital design. So to say it in other words, they believe there are either economic or organizational costs associated to investments in this area. And this is also a possible explanation for the zero effects that we find on intention to adoption digital design. So basically, our speculation is that participants are aware of the cost of bringing these new approaches in their activity, and so they don't expect any change soon in this regard. Unless they have additional support for that. Another interesting result is that treated companies declare to see lack of information or lack of skills as minor problems in order for their companies to invest more in digital design. And this is in line with the results that I showed before. So it confirms that participating in the challenge increased knowledge and skills in the companies about digital design. So to conclude, the key, so the three takeaways that are worth being stressed. The first one is that the UX challenge made a difference for participants. It triggered a change in participants because it increased specific knowledge about digital design and digital sprint and practical knowledge about how to implement digital design techniques in the reality. So we don't find effects on attitudes and planned actions, as I said, but if you remember the theory of change, so we managed to have an impact on the first step in the causal chain. And this is an interesting piece of information that needs to be considered. as all evaluations, as all studies, and as all projects, also this study has limitation, and future studies are needed in order to replicate the results. It will be very interesting to replicate the results in a bigger sample. And I would say also in a post-pandemic world, because as Nicola said, everything was run remotely, and we don't know how the situation would have gone otherwise. It's also interesting to have future studies investigating longer term impacts, right? So we could only observe effects in a limited time frame, so very short term impacts in a 1 month time after the challenge. Whether these effects are long lasting and whether they bring additional changes into companies, it is an open question that future studies would need to address. On a more methodological level, this experience was really interesting. It showed that the experimental method can be used to evaluate interventions, programs, and policies of innovation agencies. It showed that it is possible to apply this method. It is complicated, but all solid evaluation methods are complicated. And if you want to know more about this, then again, we have a workshop number 5 in a few minutes, where also James Phipps from IGMS will join in the conversation. And this is it. I think Nicola wanted to say something now.
Sure. Let me just jump in there and let's run.
Yeah.
We do need to watch the time, but I thought we'll jump in with a few questions from the chat. David, I'm going to go to you first for the first question. Can you talk just very briefly about the eligibility criteria for the companies? You said there was like 208, you only picked like 190 or something. How did you prune those down? What was that criteria?
Well, the first criteria was, we had 2 main criteria. The first one was an eligibility criteria. Companies had to be SMEs and had to have a product that was eligible and suitable for participating in the UX challenge. So to make an example, we got applications also from NGOs, for example, or for bigger companies. They were not allowed. Or, for example, we collected application for, or like, let's say, double application for the same company, and this was not allowed. And then there was a suitability check of the applications that was done by all partners, meaning that the specific product or service they would bring into the challenge was assessed on a scale based on different factors that were considered in terms of whether the product was suitable to be really addressed in the challenge, to check if it was compatible with the format of the challenge.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Nicola, I'm going to go over to you again. So I know you briefly answered this question in chat, but just it's an interesting one to speak about for the moment. Can you talk about I mean, what the designers, what the young people who are in the workplace or the students, what are they getting out of it? And talk a little bit about how the IP of those designs that are thought up, what's happening with that IP after the challenge?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And maybe I didn't make that clear. So there are 1, 2, or 3 winning teams at the UX Challenge, the best performing teams, and they receive a sort of prize. Depends from year to year. We might give like free access to online courses about interaction design, or we might, bring them to big events at the European scale, or we might just give them some devices like a tablet, because they were asking for that. They were saying we have enough about learning, so give us some devices. So you give prizes basically, okay, which is what they are interested. They are not interested in the IP, okay, because they're still learning. They might be interested in a job. And that is why, coming to the second question, we want normally to leave the IP, so intellectual property of the results, meaning these designs, so the mockups, interactive prototypes, whatever they will be, to the companies. because we know that the companies will be in the position to industrialize those results and letting them become new products or services, while the students will probably not do that. And again, they're not interested in that. However, you can decide how to tune these IPR regulations. You can have companies pay a fee to participate to the UX challenge and give them the IPR, or you might find ways to leave the IP to the designers in case they are more senior designers, and then let the designers negotiate with the companies the terms of licensing out the IP.
Okay, that makes sense. So there is room when the challenge is being set up for that sort of flexibility, that we take an assessment of the sort of companies, we take an assessment of the sort of talent that is working here, and then it can be adjusted. Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Very nice. Nicola and David, we need to leave it there. So there are a couple more things in the chat. Maybe you want to jump in and address those, but unfortunately we need to move on with the next segment. So thank you to you both for your talks today.